The wind rolled slowly across the Wyoming plains, brushing the tall grass like waves across a quiet sea. At the edge of the valley sat the Carter Ranch, 20,000 acres of dust, cattle, and stubborn pride. Most mornings started the same. Before the sun climbed over the mountains, the ranch hands were already awake. Boots hitting wooden floors, coffee brewing on the stove, and horses shifting in their stalls. Among the riders was a quiet cowboy named Ethan Cole. Ethan wasn't the loudest man on the ranch, but everyone trusted him. He was the type who spoke only when he had something worth saying. Every morning, before riding out with the cattle, Ethan stopped by the small general store in town to grab supplies for the ranch, and every morning, he saw her, a young woman sweeping the wooden porch of the store. Her name was Clara Bennett. She worked there from sunrise until dark, stacking canned goods, measuring flour, helping travelers passing through the dusty town of Millstone. But something about Clara always caught Ethan's attention. T first. He couldn't explain what it was. Then one morning, he noticed she was wearing the same dress, a faded blue cotton dress with small white flowers. The color had washed out from years of wear, and one sleeve had been stitched back together with thread that didn't quite match. The next day, same dress. The day after that, same one again. T first. Ethan assumed she simply liked it, but after 2 weeks, he realized something else. It wasn't that she liked the dress. It was that she only had one. He started noticing the small details most people missed, the careful way she washed the dress in the creek behind the store every evening, how she hung it to dry behind the building while wearing an old shawl, how she hurried to put it back on before anyone could see. Clara always smiled at customers. She was kind, polite, warm, but there was a quiet sadness in her eyes that Ethan couldn't ignore. One morning, Ethan walked inside the store to buy rope and sugar. Clara greeted him with her usual gentle smile. "Morning, Mr. Cole." "Morning, Clara," as she wrapped the supplies in brown paper. Ethan hesitated, then he asked softly, "Do you ever take a day off?" She laughed lightly. "Store doesn't run itself." Ethan nodded, but his eyes lingered on the dress, faded, thin, worn, nearly to threads. That's when he made a quiet decision. Clara Bennett wasn't going to wear the same dress every day anymore, not if he could help it. But Ethan Cole had no idea. Helping Clara would uncover a story far deeper than he expected, and a pain she had carried alone for years. The town of Millstone was small. So small that people believed they knew everyone's story, but the truth was, no one really knew Clara Bennett. She had arrived 2 years earlier with a small suitcase and a letter from the previous store owner asking that she be given work. She never talked about where she came from, never spoke of family, and she never complained. But Ethan Cole started noticing things others ignored. Clara skipped lunch most days. Sometimes she quietly wrapped leftover bread from the store in paper and slipped it into her bag. One evening, Ethan decided to follow at a distance when she left work, not out of suspicion, but concern. She didn't head toward the boarding houses where most workers lived. Instead, she walked toward the far edge of town, past the old church, past the railroad tracks, until she reached a tiny wooden cabin that looked ready to collapse. The roof sagged, the windows were cracked, smoke barely rose from the chimney. Ethan stayed hidden behind a fence as Clara opened the door, and then he heard something unexpected. A child's laughter, then another. 2 small boys ran outside and hugged her. "Mama!" Ethan froze. Clara had children? The boys couldn't have been older than 6 or 7. Clara knelt down and held them tightly like someone who hadn't seen them in years, instead of hours. Then she handed them the wrapped bread. They ate like they hadn't eaten all day. That night, Ethan rode back to the ranch with something heavy on his mind. The next day, he casually asked the store owner about Clara. The old man sighed. "Good girl. Works harder than anyone. Her husband dead." Ethan looked up. Railroad accident 3 years back. Left her with 2 boys and nothing else. The owner continued. "She came here looking for work. Said she'd take any job that let her feed those kids." Ethan stared out the window. The faded blue dress suddenly made sense. Every dollar she earned went to her children, not herself. And that night, Ethan Cole decided he was going to do something about it. Ethan didn't believe in charity that embarrassed people. Clara was proud. He could see it in the way she held herself. So instead of handing her money, He came up with a plan. The next time the ranch hands rode into town, Ethan stopped by the tailor shop. "Need some dresses," he said. The tailor looked surprised. "For who?" Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "My sister." The tailor measured from memory based on Clara's size. 3 dresses, simple but beautiful. A green cotton dress, a warm brown work dress, and a soft cream dress for Sundays. Ethan paid quietly and left without another word. 2 days later, a wooden crate arrived at the general store, addressed to Clara Bennett. Clara looked confused. "I didn't order anything." Inside the crate was a small note, payment for helping travelers who couldn't afford supplies. Clara frowned. "I don't remember doing that." The store owner shrugged. "Maybe someone appreciated your kindness." When Clara lifted the folded fabric from the crate, her eyes widened. 3 brand new dresses, real ones, soft, clean, beautiful. Her hands trembled. For a moment she simply stared at them, like they weren't real. Then tears filled her eyes. She quickly wiped them away before anyone noticed. That night, for the first time in years, Clara hung more than one dress inside her small cabin. Her boys stared in amazement. "Mum, are those yours?" Clara nodded slowly. "I think someone wanted to be kind." But across town, Ethan Cole watched from his horse as Clara walked home carrying the dresses, and for the first time, he saw her smile in a way he never had before. But the story didn't end there, because the town of Millstone was about to discover something else about Ethan Cole, something even Clara didn't know. A week later, Clara wore the green dress to work. The entire town noticed. People complimented her. She looked different, brighter, confident, but Clara still had no idea who sent the dresses until one evening, her youngest son ran up, holding something, a small note that had fallen from one of the dress pockets. Clara opened it carefully. Inside were just a few words written in simple handwriting. "Every mother deserves more than one dress," and a name, Ethan Cole. Clara stood silently for a long moment. Then she did something she rarely did. She left the boys with a neighbor and walked toward the Carter Ranch. It was nearly sunset when she reached the gate. Ethan was fixing a fence when he saw her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Clara held up the note. "You did this?" Ethan shrugged. "You needed dresses." Clara shook her head. "You didn't have to." Ethan leaned against the fence post. "Maybe not." Then he added quietly, "But I noticed." Clara's eyes filled with tears again, not from sadness this time, but relief, because for years she had felt invisible, like no one saw how hard she tried. But someone had noticed, someone cared, and from that day forward, Ethan Cole didn't just make sure Clara had more than one dress, he made sure she never faced the world alone again. Months later, the town of Millstone gathered for a wedding outside the little church. Clara Bennett walked down the aisle wearing the cream dress, and the cowboy waiting at the altar was Ethan Cole. Sometimes love begins with grand gestures, but other times, it starts with something much smaller, like a cowboy who simply noticed a woman wearing the same dress every single day.